Hello and welcome to this, the Citroen C1. It's one of the most affordable cars you can buy in the UK today, but is it a slice of French chic or is it a redressed Toyota made from tin cans? Let's find out. Let's start here at the front, where you'll note that this car looks quite similar to its Peugeot stablemate, but manages to differentiate itself a lot from the Toyota Aygo. There's chrome, and there's lots of lights like on the rest of the Citroen range, and it's quite a funky look, but I think the problem is with the Citroen look, is all the other cars are quite bubbly and chunky. There's not enough car behind this front end to carry this styling, in my opinion. I just think it looks a bit bulbous. And now we'll move to the side, where you can really see this specific model is quite highly spec'd. It's got chrome trims, it's got tinted windows, it's got all the little accoutrements. So in this spec it really helps the car look more mature and adult, but I fear in base spec it just looks quite plain. And from this profile especially, the three cars, the Peugeot, the Citroen and the Toyota, all look pretty much the same. I'll just note quickly, these little additions were made by the owner and are not a factory option. And now we finally come to what I think is the best angle for this car. The rear end. I think the tail lights are nicely designed. I think the contrasting liftgate with the body looks good, and it's very clean and very chic. Now, speaking of this liftgate, it's actually entirely glass, like a Reliant Scimitar. I think someone famous owned one of them. Take a listen to this. So, moving into the interior of the C1, it's actually quite a nice place to be in here, though that again is because of the spec of this particular model. It comes with a touchscreen, it comes with really nice HVAC controls, with air conditioning, it comes with a rev counter, and I say that because I'm fairly confident on the base model you don't get any of those things. Yes, not even a rev counter. This model also has cruise control and phone dialing capabilities built into the steering wheel controls. One oddity to note is this is of course a Citroen, so the wipers work with you moving the stalk downwards rather than up, like in every other car I own. In terms of cubby spaces, I'm pleasantly surprised too. There's no centre storage bin because it's just a low-lying console here. I imagine to increase the feeling of space in what is quite a small cabin, but you have door pockets, cup holders and a cubby in the front here, and an amply sized glove box. Though I imagine it is slightly larger on left-hand drive models because I think the fuse box is still hidden behind this. Classic French move, don't move the fuse box. They've also remembered to use nice materials in the place that it counts. So the cloth for the seats round the side is coarse and hard wearing, but on the actual cushion is a really pleasant texture. There's this leather on the steering wheel, and on the doors, instead of cheap plastic, they've just gone with body coloured metal, which saves money, but also manages to make the car look quite chic and cool. The dashboard itself is made from very cheap black plastic, but you do get this little silver insert just to lift the car slightly. I think all in all, from a design perspective, this cabin really is hitting all the marks. It's just the flimsy feel of things that's letting it down. Everything just feels like it's not, I don't know, like I could pull it apart by accident. Now I'm going to climb into the back to show you what that's like, which, as you can see, for a full-sized adult man is quite difficult. If you can see what's on the seat base, that's because this car is currently shared in the back between a baby and a dog, I believe, not at the same time, so that just helps keep the seat clean. And as you can see, well, you probably can't see, I might pan to it. As you can see, you can fit a full-sized toddler baby seat in the back, you know, the full height one for tiny little babies, so that's really good. The thing that lets it down is that entranceway is really tiny. There's not a lot back here, there's just these kinds of door pockets, though it's not a door, it's just a sort of panel pocket, and that's it. No seat backs or anything. So yeah, just for children really, and there's only 2 seats, unlike the Hyundai i10 which had 3 and 3 seat belts. There's just 2 seats back here, and not enough headroom for an adult really either. I wouldn't recommend putting anyone over about 5 feet tall in the back of this car. I don't think they'd be comfortable, and really it's for children. So finally we move on to the boot. There you go with that Reliant Scimitar style all glass tailgate. There's just this metal panel at the top. As you can see, they've done something quite intelligent with the rear parcel shelf. This is it here, and it's got a sort of counter lever system, so the rope runs up and over this and down again. So as it's opened, it pulls itself back up against the window instead of leaving it sort of up here. Whoa. Instead of sort of leaving it up here, so it doesn't get in your way at all, because it's quite a narrow opening down to the top. Really, the volume of this boot is very much up and down. So getting that fully out of the way is a smart move on Citroen's behalf. Just to go through the boot a little more closely, down here you've got your liftable floor, and underneath that you've got your spare tyre and your jack and all of that stuff. And then the seats fold down like this. It's quite simple. You pull that latch and it just pushes forwards, and that's how your seats fold down. I'm not going to do both because obviously there's a child seat in front of the other one, and I have never used a child seat before and do not want to start fighting with that now. But as you can see, it's a pretty big space. Once you've got the seats folded down, you have quite a large lip on the floor, but because this back boot is so short, I wouldn't struggle in any way to lift something over on top of the backs of the chairs that have now been folded down. You'd have to have arms that are about 30 centimetres long to struggle with that, to be fair, or be as weak as Rob. So now we've gone through the inside and the outside, let's take it for a quick drive, shall we? So driving the Citroen C1, let's go through the performance. It's not going to take your face off. It's a 3-cylinder petrol unit with about 70 horsepower. It's not going to blow you away, and it's a 5-speed manual gearbox. So again, it's a bit longer gear just to get you to those motorway speeds, and then at motorway speeds, your revs are still relatively high. Going around people on the motorway is going to be a bit of a pain, and you're not really going to get around many things on an A road. But you are going to get to motorway speed at least, and you're certainly going to be comfortable on an A road driving at 60. The car doesn't struggle to reach that. There's more feeling in the steering than you get from some other cars in this class, and the accelerator and brake pedal are perfectly good and reassuring to use. You can genuinely feel the throttle responding to you. I suspect just because it's got that little bit more power than something like a Hyundai i10, you just get that little feeling of pep to the car. And the brakes are perfectly good, they're progressive, they feel secure. Now, problem is the clutch. The clutch engagement is incredibly high. It was the same in the previous generation of the C1. It feels like a clutch that's about to give up in any other car, but it's just how they are. So you get used to it over time. I got used to it when I learned to drive in the previous generation C1. But when you first get in this car, you will be lifting the clutch up for a really long time because the pedal goes a long way to the floor, and then it engages in the last 2 centimeters of travel. So you're lifting it a really long way before anything happens, and you have to really get used to keeping the revs low for such a long time while you wait for the clutch to come up. So then getting in any other car, you'll have to be wary afterwards of not stalling it, because stalling it will feel quite easy after being in this. Then driving comfort, it's very good. Again, a lot of that's to do with the spec of the car. The interior of the car feels quite nice in this spec. With the touchscreen and the big dials and the nice leather on the steering wheel, it all really helps, especially the leather on the steering wheel, because it's what you're touching 99% of the time you're in the car. You should always have at least one hand on the steering wheel, even when doing maneuvers. So just having that little bit more detail paid to that part of the car really helps the feeling of quality in here. The cabin is very wide and spacious. It feels wider than any of the other cars in this class, and that helps the car feel more grown up and adult. It gives you more knee room as well, so you just feel a bit more comfortable. You can get your ideal seating position, and the seat itself has a full range of adjustments. It doesn't have an adjustable headrest, but as a taller person driving this car, I can say it's perfectly fine by me, so I wouldn't be worried about not being able to adjust it high enough for you. Maybe if you're shorter, you might not find it as comfortable. That's what I would say. The lack of a center console also helps the feeling of space in here, and really it's just quite a light and airy car. There's lots of visibility in the front of the glass house, and the rear view mirrors are nice and big, so you can tell what's going on behind you, which is good, because the actual rear window, in order to give privacy to the rear load space, because the entire rear liftgate is glass, it's incredibly tinted. It is pitch black from the outside. So on a grey day like today, I really can't see through it. I would only see headlights through it. But because of the visibility around the rest of the car and the rear view mirrors, that's not really a problem. It's easier than driving a van, for sure. So yeah, all in all, quite a well put together car. There's a slight feeling of flimsiness to the interior. The gear stick itself is a little wobbly when it's in gear. The gear shift is fine, it's good. You're not going to get thrown back out of the gear or anything, but it's just a little bit wobbly, and some of the plastic's lower down, and the plastic on the dashboard itself feels flimsy and a bit cheap. But these are cars built to a price, and that's the price you pay, is the flimsiness in some places. And what this car has done is put nice things in the bits where you do touch it. Mostly. It's just that slight tinny feeling. The slight tinny feeling and the incredibly high clutch. Those are the down marks for the Citroen C1. And the styling. I don't like the styling. The every time I have to go back to it, it's this and this, and this. So it's this and this, and that. But no, I'd say those are the three bad marks for the Citroen C1. Incredibly high clutch. Some parts of it have a tinny feeling, the door's shut, the dashboard, and the exterior styling is not to my tastes. I prefer the look of the VW Group's cars of this size, and really, I mean, there's no winning me over though. I don't really like the look of very small cars. Just not my kind of thing. And having said all of that, while they haven't carried out the style on the outside in a way that I like, I must say on the interior it feels more stylish and well designed than the other cars in the class for me. So that's really it. I think there are better cars in this class if you just need a small cheap car. But if that's what you want, get the small cheap car version, get the base version. If you're a full-grown adult and you just want a small car because you live in a city, or you have a small drive, or you don't use it very often and you don't want something that has expensive insurance and petrol costs and service costs, they'll all be as cheap as they are on the cheap version, but you pay more money and get a nicer interior and more style on the inside to help it feel adult. I think that's where the sweet spot for this is. Because obviously you can get that in the Up, but you get it through the Up Beats, which very much is aimed at young people, and I feel like this interior is more adult. So that's where this car fits. Is if you want a sort of slightly more mature adult car, but you're restricted in other places into getting the small car, this is where you can get something just a bit funky and French that's just a bit nicer to own. I think that really is the slot. So, back to you, Harry, to wrap up this conclusion. So to conclude, the Citroen C1. Stylish, but flimsy. I personally would get incredibly irritated by the clutch and how high it is, and I think the car is incredibly spec sensitive. In this very high spec, it feels very adult, very mature, and it's very nice on the inside, but I think in a lower spec, you really would feel like you'd got very little for your money. To sum it up, basically if you want a very cheap car, buy the Up or the i10. If you just want a very small car that's nice, buy a high spec one of these, and you'll have all the little creature comforts you want in a very compact and very stylish package. Perfect in a city, but I don't think I would have one.